Welcome to the Wild Conversation, where we don't pull any punches, but we punch you in the face with the greatest and best thinking in what organizations and leaders are struggling with today. I don't know. We don't pull any punches. That's a funny statement. We don't pull any punches because the only options are you either punch me or you don't. Like, it's a funny, I don't know about if I like the boxing way of going. But anyway, all right, welcome to the Wild Conversation. It is so good to be with you on this Wild Friday and to see your faces right now. So, what do you do when the pressure to go faster does a hostile takeover of what you know you should do for the long-term health of your organization or your people? What do you do when the pressure to go faster does a hostile takeover of what you know you should do for the long-term health of your organization or for your people? You hire wild leaders is what you do. You call Dr. Daniel Halleck. I'm kind of kidding about that. But what I mean is that's a big question, right? What do you do when you feel that pressure? And here's where I want to start. I want to level the playing field. Every team that we are working with, leadership team, organizational team, is really busy. Every team we're working with is facing tremendous pressure to go faster. The only teams that aren't, and there are a couple of examples, are those who are somehow subsidized, so their work is subsidized, so there is not that frantic pace, or they work for a nonprofit which was funded by a wealthy business person who has now thought that they're going to serve this way. And I think the general theme there is that their work is subsidized. They don't feel that pressure maybe. And even in some of those places, they feel the pressure as well. But here's my point. My point is that pressure to go faster does not make you different. And I also want you to hear that I'm not minimizing the pressure that you feel for accelerating growth. I think for some of us, we're in a season where growth acceleration is like this necessity. Like we have to grow. We have to find a way to grow from nothing to something, or from something to a much larger thing. And so this whole thing around accelerating growth is such a fascinating topic to have a chance to dig into. We actually had a leader say to us this last week, this is a senior executive, that said, "What do you do when you're going so fast you are creating your own weather?" Love that. What do you do when you're going so fast that some of you are like, I'm looking at your faces, and some of you are like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. You're creating your own weather. Like, roll with that. It's so interesting. So here's the headline. The headline is this: what would it mean to accelerate growth with purposeful, connected intent, as opposed to accelerating growth for the sake of compulsive, selfish pressure? Accelerating growth with purposeful, connected intent over accelerating growth for the sake of compulsive, selfish pressure. And here is the reality, is that most of us don't roll this way a lot of the time. And I think that the reality is I want to normalize that, because, and as Daniel said, I am not the person who's here to say, like, here are the top 5 tips that I have mastered, and now go do this and you'll be good. Not that. Some of you know so much about this topic and content that I want you to bring to the conversation. But I do want to normalize that, is that most of us don't roll this way. And listen to this. This is what as I was preparing for this over the week, most of us don't roll this way, especially when the margins get tight. Especially when the margins get tight. And margins, you know already that I don't mean just financial margins. I mean all the margins. When different margins, relational capital gets tight, resourcing, time to breathe, our job prospects get tight. There's all kinds of deadlines, those kinds of things where we reduce the margin, and then we reduce our capacity to move forward or to accelerate growth with purposeful, connected intent. And we start to move toward that whole compulsive, selfish pressure. I want to also mention this: that accelerating growth does not mean that growth or acceleration are good or bad, but that we might be able to be thinking of it with more intent. more about when to accelerate or grow as opposed to acceleration for the sake of acceleration. And I will say that one of my common experiences across the organizations that we're working with, and if you look at even the narrative out there, because it's interesting, this is not all that popular of a topic right now. We don't hear these words as commonly as we did maybe a couple of years ago. But that so often it's just, we kind of throw out, our business is growing. Our business is going to grow. Our organization is growing. And I think that that's getting us to think beyond that is where we're going to try to go today. And so in many ways, if you think about accelerated growth as not good or bad, it actually, I would suggest, is more like a gas pedal than a stick of dynamite. So think about it that way. It's more about a choice of when to accelerate than it is about a stick of dynamite. Last week, we talked about that concept that a leader's job is to manage the pressure cooker. When we were talking about leading through conflict and leveraging conflict, we talked about that. And so I think one of the ways you manage the pressure cooker is having that awareness that there is a gas pedal. There is a time to push, and there might be a time to take your foot off that pedal. Next week, this topic of learning agility is very related to this, and I'm going to save most of that content because that concept of that actually started my connection and friendship with Dr. Harvey, who's going to be here next week. Started because I was on a panel that was all about accelerating learning, which got me thinking a few years back, about the concept of acceleration when it's related specifically to learning. So we'll talk more about that next week. But before I get into some sort of, let's bring this to the, let's land this plane and give us some ways to move forward. I want to give you a couple of things to think about that struck me this week. And the first thing is this, is faster for the sake of faster. And when we do it that way, that it almost always increases our risk exponentially. When we do faster for the sake of faster or growth for the sake of growth. And I'm just telling you, that is the common narrative we hear from business leaders all the time, is if they're in a growing season, it's just grow. I'm here to grow my business. And there's something more than that, I think. So every Monday night, I mountain bike. I don't know why I still mountain bike, because I go with a bunch of midlife men. And my sons do not ride bikes. I think it's basically because those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s riding bikes just continue to ride bikes. But I mountain bike every Monday night. I probably shouldn't, because there is a risk involved. But this week I did more than mountain bike. I actually was kind of an ex-gamer, if you know what that is. Because Wednesday I went skiing also. I was really proud of myself, because it's like, oh, look at dude mountain bikes, and then he skied on Wednesday. And so I thought, first of all, am I going to be able to do this? I woke up Wednesday morning not feeling great, as the WiLD team knows. And I was thinking, I don't even know if I should be going skiing. I'm going for the twilight hours starting at 2 p.m. But I go skiing. And I go skiing with two of the people that I actually mountain bike with. And I got to tell you that there is a healthy pressure among us, a healthy competitive pressure, both when we bike and when we ski, as I found Wednesday, to go faster. And Wednesday evening, I'd skied for a few hours, and then I was at this point where I was realizing that I don't know if those of you who have skied before know what I'm talking about. My thighs were done. Like, I don't mean like a little bit done, like done. And I'm a good enough skier that I can my legs will continue to kind of do what their habit is. I have a horrible fear that's a very possible reality that I'm going to catch a ski somewhere, and skis are like do not belong on a person's feet when they're going fast anyway. And if you catch a ski wrong, you know what it does to your knee? Like, I've seen this happen with friends. So I was getting to this point where my legs are gone. One of my friends who's particularly competitive was really choosing to go fast. I think it's because he doesn't go as fast on a bike. So he was kind of stepping up his game. And that was actually kicking in my competitive juices. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm at that point where I have almost zero energy left in my legs, but I'm still got this compulsion to go faster. And mostly because I wanted to keep up, to be honest. And I was getting to the point where I thought where what was happening is that the hill was taking over. Like, the whole concept of learning, by the way, that's all, so much of what we're about is that whole concept of learning and developing related to leaders. That was so far in the past. Like, this is all about just going faster to keep up and somehow comparing myself to my friend. Yes, I have not grown up past this. That is an immaturity that I will continue to work on, I promise. But at this point now, I'm along for the ride. And I thinking about this week, we were working with a couple of teams this week, specifically in the space of learning agility for their organization. And I think, how many of us experience this? Going faster for the sake of going faster. How many of us have felt this before? At moments where we move from performing at a high level to going faster and faster for the sake of the pace that causes us to move from a learning moment to an intense moment of performance. And the faster we go, the closer we come to a crash, derailment, or even blowing it all up. Whether it's the pressure of our business, the leaders around us, or on the whole system of our lives, including our families and friends, going faster without intention and knowing when to stop and to pause, or to just slow down a bit, or to take a break is dangerous for all. We've all been there. Some of us are there now. And when it comes to learning, we'll talk about learning agility next week related to all that. The cost of this can be really huge. That concept of just growth for the sake, accelerating growth for the sake of not thinking about what's going on there. So I think this is the first thing I want us to just think about is just to normalize this experience. We feel this, but what would it mean to continue to move, but to move with intent? And possibly to continue to grow and to think about what acceleration of growth looks like, but to do it with intent as opposed to just saying, we're going to grow this thing. Here's the second thing I just want to mention is that sometimes we are accelerating simply because we have better things to do. It's just like, let me get this out of the way. And my example of this from this last week is so funny. My son is taking a piano class because it's the only elective that was available. I'd like to be proud of my son and say, he just loves music. But he's taking piano. And so I'm listening to him, and I happen to have this old electric piano that he's, is that what you call it? He's busted out, he's playing in his room. And this week, the assignment was Ode to Joy. I don't know if most of you know the tune to Ode to Joy, but this is the way it goes in my head. I see some of you like nodding along. Like, that's the way it's supposed to sound, right? And at some point, he has to play this in front of his teacher. And so he's been practicing. He calls my wife in there. I'm the horrible dad because I'm just like, I want to just correct all of this. But what's going on in his room is what I hear is this. Start over. Frustration. It's all over the map. It's like, and I'm actually in bed at this point because first of all, shut up. I'm trying to sleep. But the second thing I want to yell out is, that's not the way it goes. But there was a sense in which he just wants to get it over with and move past it. And it's interesting, right? I was thinking about, I think I talked to Dr. Halleck about this week, because thinking about the way that, what is the cadence that song is supposed to be played that fits with what my son is trying to get done is a really interesting kind of equation when you think about growth. What is that? What does that cadence look like? What would it mean to discover the pace that includes what the song is supposed to sound like, but doesn't make it all about what the sound is supposed to sound like? So it also includes my son's thinking about his own learning. And it's so interesting. The pressure that we face in that is so interesting. So the third thing is this. You know what has come up so often in my conversations about growth is the word scale. I want you to think for a moment about your definition of the word scale. Those of us who use business speak often, I have to use that deep voice. I don't really have a radio voice, but if I had one, scale. That concept of scale, what is scale? And why do we talk about it so often related to growth? But here's what's interesting about the definition of scale. Scale is preparation for growth. Scale is preparation for growth. It is not growth in and of itself. And I think so often we have this, we throw these words around, but thinking about what it means for us to scale is what it means for us to prepare for the possibility of growth. The possibility of, and I would say also the possibility of accelerated growth. And there is so much pressure we have to get going or to keep up that we've already gotten behind. That's another sort of failure of margin. And that, again, what I would say is that decreased margins will force us to accelerate when scale might have given us a choice. If scale is that preparation for growth, that scale might have given us a choice. And the examples of this there's so many examples of this. I mean, it isn't just about business, by the way. What we face so often is people who come into a career moment where scale would have meant moving forward with purposeful intent earlier. So they were scaling and getting ready for that growth opportunity that was coming, as opposed to now I'm just trying to get a job. And if you back this whole machine up from that individual, now you think about what is an organization? It's a bunch of individuals together. So a lack of preparation, a lack of scaling thinking is a lack of that preparation for that growth that's going to occur, that happens in every individual's life. And you back that up into an organization, you put a bunch of people in a season of massive speed and acceleration of growth without scale, without thinking about scale. Now we all have a problem, right? Like someone once asked me, they said, what is the biggest challenge that people face when they come to WiLD Leaders to work with you all? And I said, the best I could say was, we all fail to prepare well. We don't do that as well as we could. If we stepped back with intent and when we did have margin, now I'm not saying we can't catch up, like that's the reality most of us live in, but it would mean it would mean to slow down enough. We have teams that we're working with that will say, our team members say that's the process being with, like, together as a team, working through our whole and intentional leader development is one of the best things they're doing. And they still feel pressure to not be present when those moments come. And we've realized, I think one of the things our team has realized is a lot of what we're doing is help people not stop. Because so often what leaders will say is, oh, then the answer is, I need to learn when to say no. You know what I'm talking about in terms of like slowing down the speeding train is like, I just need to learn to say, and I think that's not necessarily the answer. The answer might be to slow down enough to realize there's a choice. To slow down within the rhythm of what you're doing, and to move forward with intent, and to think there might be actually a different option than yes or no. Because we certainly wouldn't want to become an organization where everyone's just saying no all the time, but could we look for other options? Could we slow down enough, not to pause even or to stop, but to say in the rhythm of our business, could we slow down enough? So think about this. The concept of when it comes to accelerated growth, first of all, as you've heard me say, is to approach it more like, this is knowing when to grow, and it's about that preparation to grow. It's about thinking about scale before growth comes, is what might be one of the most critical things that we do. And it's the concept really of moving well, as one of the most powerful things, of moving well. And think about it this way. I know that that Navy SEAL teams they talk about this. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. When I was thinking about this morning and thinking about you all, I got a little choked up, I got to tell you, because I thought about this. What if in every area of my life, as a leader and as a person, I moved with purposeful, connected intent? If I knew why I was moving, if I knew who I was and for whom I was moving, and if I knew the specific way I was going to move, that's that strategic part that fits with who I am, that fits the cadence and the right pace of not only the organization, but the people around me, but also for me. And that takes a moment of pause. And I thought, oh man, do I want that for every one of us this morning? What would it take to move like that? If you've ever seen like a SEAL team move, and I did some reading on this, listen to this. It was like, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Some of you have heard that before. But you know what they also say? And I hope this isn't morbid, but they also say this, but also too slow is dead. You know what I mean? It's like too slow is dangerous, but it's also interesting what they'll say is too fast, and there's a good chance you'll be extended without intention. There's a good chance that your flanks will be covered or won't be covered. And what's interesting about it is moving with purposeful, connected intent would mean a greater understanding of who I am of why I'm here in the first place, of who I am and who you are, that kind of connection. And then also with intent to move at a pace and in a way that actually fits. And we talked about this even in our WiLD strategy. What is the pace strategically that we choose in terms of the community of people that we're a part of with you? And what would it take to do this? So here's what I want to have you think about is that this is really about this choice of knowing when to apply the gas or to let off that gas. That's the starting place. And if you think about the car analogy, it's like, why did you get in the car in the first place? What kind of driver are you? Who's riding with you? Who are you going to see? And what is the best way? What's the best way that gets you there that will fit you? And so here are the 3 questions as you get into these breakouts. And I would say, if I was going to land this plane, is like, this is where it comes back to. And I hope this doesn't feel like a derailment from accelerated growth, because it's so connected to growth. And that concept of when to make those choices is to begin with this. This is what we're working with so many teams on. Why are you here? Who are you and who do you serve? And how are you going to serve them best? What is the cadence that is you? Because this is bringing it back to that concept of whole and intentional leader development as it relates to accelerating growth requires leaders and members, every person who know themselves, will communicate when they need to slow down, and also does not pander to the paralysis that can come on by those who are questioning every decision. So it doesn't mean like stop. It's not that. But having a team and building a culture of that kind of moment is key, like so that we could actually be making those choices in real time, so we don't blow out our knees as we ski. So let's get out into some breakout groups. I've got some great thinking going.